The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Morning and welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson.
And I'm Shannon Penrod, and thrilled to be here with my good friend. You're looking all cozy and like American. You look like something out of a Tommy Hilfiger catalog.
It's kind of chilly in my house. I haven't been out since very early this morning, so I'm not sure what the weather is.
There we go. I haven't been out either. I've been chained to my desk here, so I have no idea myself. I have to be honest. But it's been like on and off, warm and cold here. So
Yes.
who knows? In
Very
fact, you can
strange
hear it.
weather.
I've got a little bit of a residual cold left over, but we're soldiering on, right?
Right.
I wanted to say that we are live right now on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and a bunch of other places, but that is only because we pre-recorded last night. I will say, though, that I'm there watching with you guys live, so you continue to send in questions and comments. And I sort of love this now, this weekly thing where I get to watch the show with our audience. And especially today, Nancy, because we've got some amazing guests that are going to be joining with us. And I say that with an asterisk. I'm not 100% sure that our first guest is going to be with us, but we'll see. Because I'm just not 100% sure. There were some extenuating circumstances, and we'll see if she's able to join us. But I know for sure that Leigh Merryday Porch is going to be here with us. She's an amazing blogger that back in the day, I followed her very closely. Her blog, Flappiness Is. And she's got a new book out called The Scenic Route. And I know for sure that she's going to be with us later on. But Kranowitz is also supposed to be with us. She is author of the Out of Sync Child series. And hopefully she'll be able to make it here with us. She was having some extenuating circumstances, so if she's not here, we will forgive her, but we're hoping that she'll be able to join us. But before that, we've got all kinds of things to talk about in the news. And even before that, we need to take a second to talk about Wyart. But before we do that, let me not forget to tell you guys that we're live on all those platforms, but we also are a podcast available wherever you get your podcasts as a free download. And we hope that you'll check us out, share, like, review, do all of those things. Right, Nancy?
Right.
So we have this weekly thing where we're asking you to check in with us about this fabulous artist that you happen to know, your son, Wyatt Jackson, and what he's been painting this week, because this has been my treat all week long that I get to see what Wyatt has created. So what's Wyatt done this week?
We have a couple of commissions he's done. I don't know which one Traven wants to put up first. He did, this is Blue.
My goodness, look at how gorgeous that is.
Yeah, a dog named Blue that a friend of mine in Virginia commissioned for him to paint.
Amazing. And the expression that he catches on the face is crazy good.
Yeah, I love the one blue eye on this dog.
Yeah.
And then next we have Sucho's kitty.
Oh,
Ducky. This cat is named Ducky. That Sucho commission.
We love Sucho. Sucho has been on the show before. We used to do Suchoga because she's an amazing autism therapist who often does yoga with her.
A yogi, yeah, she's a yogi. She's living back in Virginia now. I have to ship this painting out to her.
That's what a beautiful kitty. I've never seen her kitty before. So what is the name of her kitty?
Ducky.
Ducky. Of course it is. That sounds very Sucho to me.
Then we have two golden retrievers, Daisy and Hunter.
Oh, look at them. They're beautiful. So just so that people understand, Wyatt paints a wide variety of things, and there's my dog who needs a painting. But he paints a wide variety of things, but these were all commissioned. So people have started sending you guys photos of their
Yes,
dogs and asking for Wyatt to paint them. What a
that's right,
beautiful gift.
Shannon.
If you
Yeah,
know
he's
somebody in
been
your life who loves their animals, send Wyatt, and where would they go to talk to you so that they can find out how much it is? Because I know he's gotten a little bit more expensive. It's still very reasonable, you guys, but
yes,
his
still very.
price has gone up.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
gone up a little bit for commissions, but you can send me a message on Facebook at Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson.
there you go. Amazing stuff. Now, is that everything? I don't want to miss anything.
Yeah, that's everything for today. And he has a Facebook page. You see there, Wyart Autism.
There we go.
Um, but
I
you
want
can,
to say I don't even know if you know this yet, Nancy, but we are hoping that, fingers crossed, next Friday we are going to debut the very first segment of our new show, Stories from the Spectrum,
great.
on Friday. We're hopeful that that's going to be next Friday, the premiere, the debut of it. And it has sort of a 60-minute format that there are different segments, and in each segment they feature the work and the voice and the lives of people that are neurodiverse. So it's stories
Right.
from the spectrum, um, information about and for people who are neurodiverse. And each segment is its standalone, very own thing. Like I can tell you that one of the in the first episode, there's this amazing animation that a high school senior did. We have a segment from Danny Bowman that's just amazing to see the things that she's doing. We have a segment from Stephen Gaber, who's the autistic traveler from a place that he visited, and that he filmed his commentary on the place, his review on the place. But one of the other segments that we have is a very special segment about Wyatt,
Yeah,
that was done by my son. And Nancy,
I know.
I can't wait for you to see it,
I can't wait to see it.
because it's not at all this is the amazing thing about this. It's not at all what I expected,
Uh-huh.
because it's my son's perspective of Wyatt's work,
Right.
which is unique.
Yeah.
Wyatt's work is unique, and my son's perspective on it is so unique. And I was like, well, if this isn't proof about how we need to stand back and let them do their thing, then I don't know what is.
Right.
So I'm excited for all of those things. Plus, there's another wild card. We're deciding which one to put in for the fifth one for the week, but that will be next Friday.
Great.
But obviously, we'll let you see it before that, Nancy.
Okay, I
Uh,
can't wait.
yeah, I think you'll really enjoy it. I was moved. I thought it was really spectacular. But I'm the mother of one of the individuals, so I might be slightly, like lean towards thinking that it's brilliant.
Right.
But then you will also, because you also share that. In any case, we're going to do the news, but before we go to news, we have a new sponsor on the show, and we've been loving showing a little bit about Zbeds. So take a look. Welcome back.
Those are so
So,
fun.
yeah, I know. But my thing is, whenever I see that, I want to take a nap.
I know.
I want to crawl in and be in a cocoon
Yeah.
and adjust the fans and the lights the way I want them and take a nap. But we have a much too much show left for me to take a nap. So it's time for us to do in the news. And our first story up, Nancy, is one of those stories. I just love the MTA in New York. I just love all the ways that they are embracing the autism community. I don't know if you know this, but we've had them on the show before because they have a museum underground in New York City when people visit New York City, they love to take kiddos on the spectrum, and they have a whole program for the schools there that is autism friendly, and they actively seek out young people to come because they know that so many people on the spectrum really love trains and
Yeah.
subways.
My
Well,
son is one of them. My son is one of them.
yeah, and and Jem went through a phase. He isn't still in it, but I think he's still a little fascinated by the whole thing. We keep saying at some point we're going to take the train across the country. I
Right.
get car sick, in my bathtub. So
Right.
so and I used to live in New York City, and I was somebody who would walk rather than take the subway if I could, because
Uh-huh.
sometimes they go so fast and I would get car sick in the subway. But I still love the MTA for New York for the things that they do. And this month, I feel like they just nailed it, Nancy.
Yeah, they are their announcements. They have subway announcements and messages at 11 different stations. Two messages will play every 15 minutes, and those messages are from students with autism at the Foundry Learning Center.
I just love this. So, as you said, every 15 minutes from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., when you're traveling in New York at those stations, they have like running announcements that they make. But now people are hearing children who are on the spectrum, and I love the examples that they gave. That Tycho, who says that he loves the F train, urges riders to keep the stations clean by using the garbage cans on the platforms, and Jordan, who's 10, reminds strap hangers to not hold train doors. I just love this. What a wonderful opportunity for those kids. That's like a chance of a lifetime
It
to
is.
record and then hear themselves playing in the subway station. Special shout out to Demetrius Cricklow, who is the senior vice president of the New York City Transit MTA. Great job. Whoever thought that up, great job and wonderful execution. This is where we see people starting to get acceptance and being allies in the right way.
Yes,
Love, love,
for
love
sure,
this.
Shannon, for sure. Great
Absolutely love it.
story. And then our next story is also a really great story.
Isn't this
Um,
unbelievable, Nancy?
Unbelievable. An autistic teen has been found alive, shivering in a cold Utah parking lot 3 years after he vanished from California. Isn't this an astounding story, Shannon?
This rocked me right off the couch when I first I heard it on the news, and they didn't identify the young person as being on the spectrum, but they said that a teenager who had been missing from California for 3 years was found in Utah, and I was like, what is that story? Like, what happened there? And then later when I found out that this is, somebody from our tribe, Nancy,
Mm-hmm.
and this harrowing story about, the mom basically turning around and him being gone, and for 3 years she has looked for him every single day, not given up hope, believed that he was somewhere out there. They even moved from California back to where they lived in Idaho, hoping that he would show up there. And then I guess when they called the other day and said, we think that we have your son, that there was a little bit of an initial disbelief, because and I guess in the beginning when her the boy's stepfather, her husband, said they're calling about him, I understand that mom was terrified. She thought that maybe they'd found a body. But now they're all reunited. You know that there's much, much more to the story, but I'm so like the depths of the relief that I feel on their part. I can't
I
even
know.
imagine what it's like for them.
It's pretty astounding. And as you said, they haven't really unraveled where he's been for 3 years. But at the time um, they found him, they assumed he was homeless, and he was in at a gas station in Summit County, Utah. And his name is Connor Jack Oswald. Um, so 20 years old now, disappeared at the age of 17.
And
And
it's not the first time that there was a record of him. Apparently, I don't know which state it was in, Nancy, if you see it, maybe Nevada. There was another state where there was a record a couple of weeks ago or a couple of months ago where they had run into the man, and it was they'd run into, because he's a man now, and they'd made a record of it. And it wasn't until the two people who found him in the gas station started digging through the paperwork, because I don't know why here in the United States, when law enforcement has paperwork, why the states aren't connected to each other. Because
right,
when you think about how many things fall through the crack, like a missing person, it wasn't until somebody who was really doing their job and cared deeply dug in that he realized, wait a second, I think this person is this person, dug further and said, this person is missing.
right.
I can't, you just shiver when you think about how
No,
often and what he's been through. Um, I can't even imagine. But the fact that he's okay and they're reunited fills me with gratitude. And I hope that they get all the help and support that they need to get through this next phase, which will not be, right?
no, no. But uh, God bless
Oh,
the authorities and everybody that made this happen.
absolutely. I'm so grateful for his mom. Okay.
Last,
Our
you want
last in the news story.
you want
Oof.
to cover this one?
Okay. So here's the deal. This popped up on my feed from the Wall Street Reporter. And I want to be very abundantly clear. There's a podcast where they just talk about stocks that they think are poised to take off. They weren't covering this story as some news breaking, hey, guess what's happening in the field of autism. They were covering this from the point of view of there is a company that's about to get a stage 2 trial for a drug that will have implications for at least one type of autism, for Fragile X.
Fragile.
And so we you can watch. I didn't make it through the entire thing because it's pretty dense, and I'll be honest, they were talking about this from the point of view of a business and stock and money, and I couldn't handle it. Because you know we're talking about things that are really important to our community, and I couldn't bear to hear it being talked about in terms of money. I just couldn't stomach it. But the drug that we're talking about is psilocybin, which has been around for a while, been used for other things.
A
But
hallucinogenic drug.
and they've been trying it for different things for a while, but they when trying it in a different way, they saw something remarkable. They've gotten, or they're about to, I believe, get approval to do a stage 2 trial, which means for the first time that they'll actually be giving it to people.
Right.
But what they have noticed is that when psilocybin is taken in one way, no impact. But when it is ingested, that there is something that happens that appears. They're hopeful that it's going to show that it reduces inflammation in the brain,
Hmm.
and that as a result of that, when you take something where there's inflammation in the brain and you reduce the inflammation, it opens up the neural pathways and you're able to process information faster and in a more effective way.
Right.
And of course, we know, Nancy, we've covered the research on this for 10 years. There are more and more people who feel that some of the more disabling aspects of autism seem to be tied to inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
And more research is showing that inflammation starts in the gut, and that does have an impact on what's happening with the way that the brain processes information. So, of course, this company is very hopeful that what they're going to see is that it will reduce the inflammation in children with Fragile X. And as a result of that, they will have a reduction in symptoms like being able to remember information, which is important when you're learning how to speak, right?
Right.
And that if it does, that will have further implications for autism that is not Fragile X, with the potential to have implications for things like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, autoimmune disorders. They're very excited about it. But again, this entire thing was being covered from the standpoint of being a stock that may or may not be poised to be worth a great deal more.
Right.
That part made me sick.
Yeah.
I just can't tolerate that. But the ideas behind it, and we have to be clear and honest and open that it is just ideas. They don't know for sure yet, but they have some preliminary results that they're hopeful and that they believe will get them to the point where you can get a stage 2 trial.
Right.
So we'll keep posted, and perhaps we will have the company, if you're a stock person, is Nova Mentis Life Sciences. And so we'll kind of keep an eye on that and see if what happens with them, and perhaps we will invite their scientist on to talk about, but not from the point of view of it being stock.
Right.
I mean, it's a very real part of life. I don't mean to disavow it, and it's what keeps things going. It's just, Nancy, when we're talking about our kids and the potential for our kids to be able to say their names.
Right.
I really, I don't want to hear how much. At one point, the guy says, the world of autism is a $5.8 billion yearly industry. And that just made me want to puke.
I know, to think of us as just an industry in the eyes of some.
Yeah. And well, because for me, always, I always used to say this at CARD. I would say, when I walk by and see people working, I think about how the cord to their computer goes directly to a home where a child is struggling. And that, that's what the connection, I can't unsee that connection. So to have this Wall Street person just talking about how, how much money there is in this field, I was like, yeah, barf.
Yeah, mercy.
But if they find something that is useful in helping people to achieve what they want to achieve, then we have to talk about it in any case. Well, I feel
we'll be on the lookout for that.
Yes, absolutely. I feel very strongly that our first guest has not been able to join, and I do want to say that that we were aware of the fact that might not be happening. But Carol Kranowitz is the author of the Out of Sync Child series, and maybe we should just talk a little bit about that. We'll reschedule with her to have her back on.
Okay.
And then we'll move on to our second guest, who I believe is already here with us. But do you want to tell them just a little bit about Carol and the Out of Sync series, and then
Carol was a music, movement, and drama teacher for 25 years, and she observed many out of sync preschoolers, and to help them become more competent at work and play, she began to study sensory processing and sensory integration theory. And out of that, she helped identify some of the students' needs, steer them into early intervention. And in her writings and workshops, she explains to teachers, parents, and educators how sensory issues play out. It provides enjoyable sensory motor technique, Shannon, and addressing at home and school. And she is best known, as you said, for her books, which are, there's 3 books in the series, the Out of Sync child.
Yes. She's also the inventor of the in-sync child therapy, which you can find out more on her website, out hyphen of hyphen sync, sync hyphen child.com. You can find out more about that. We were having her on. I know we talked about this yesterday, and somebody said, "Isn't that an older book? Hasn't that book been around for a long time?" But there is a new edition of the book that's coming out with more information about sensory processing because we've learned a lot in the last few years.
Right.
And I look forward to having Carol on because I know so many of you write in all the time and say, what do we do about the sensory stuff? And I know, Nancy, you're on this campaign as well, that there are a lot of things that you can do, but when you have somebody who works in the field of OT or something similar to that and really understands sensory stuff, boy, you can make some real progress. I know that you at one point found an OT who was just amazing to work with
Yeah, he
Wyatt.
was great. Yeah, Alex Goolsby worked with Wyatt for a while, and he's the one who started getting us to do a schedule, which we had not really done religiously before, and that really helped Wyatt. But he was an autism whisperer. He did wonders with
Don't you love that? Well, we'll look forward to having Carol on a different time,
Wyatt.
but I'm
Definitely.
happy to say that our next guest is already here with us. And if it's okay with her, we're going to go ahead and bring her in early.
Great.
But let's talk a little bit about her before we welcome her.
Hey, Leigh Merryday Porch. What a lovely name.
Right?
Um, and she, in the scenic route, Leigh offers insight into how parents of children with autism can redefine hope in a world that often has a narrow view of what hope is. She's an educator and an expert on autism spectrum disorders. She's also the mother of a son who is autistic. Um, she knows the pressure of special needs parenting, the need to overcome the challenges that our children face. But she says we must write our own stories about what is possible for our kids. I love that. And love them just as they are. She has chronicled her family's journey from the shock and uncertainty of a severe autism diagnosis to acceptance and advocacy. Um, and in her beautifully written book, The Scenic Route, she shares the lessons she's learned about charting her own course. So, welcome to the show.
Let's also say, though, that Leigh, before this book, is an amazing blogger. Her blog, Flappiness Is amazing, was one of the first things that I followed. And I said this yesterday. I kind of wanted to be her when I grew up because she just has an interesting way of looking at the world and brings humor and a reality and honesty to everything. She's also a veteran educator and academic coach with a master's in autism spectrum disorders. How amazing is that? She's an advanced certified autism specialist. She provides training in autism awareness for schools, civic organizations, and law enforcement, and has presented at disability related conventions. Her writing has appeared in Chicken Soup for the Soul of Parents Raising Kids on the Spectrum, the Huffington Post, and the Child Mind Institute. And now with this book, she's just tearing it up. Uh, so, Leigh, welcome back to Autism Live.
Hi, thank you for having me back. It's been a long time.
It has been a long time, and I'm excited that you're here. So
Yeah, Lee, thanks for adding to that bio, Shannon. I cut it short. I'm glad that
that's
you
okay.
supplemented there. Lee, you're so accomplished. And as Shannon said, you're a very successful blogger. What made you decide to write this book? We heard there's a news story that triggered it.
Yeah, it was the funniest thing. I was up at well, I guess it wouldn't be funny that I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning, but I was up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I was reading an article of um, I'll say an autistic self advocate who had the happy news that they had just graduated from college and it was actually a graduate degree. And the individual was was interviewed. And at one point, she said that it could have gone differently, except that when she was little and doctors told her mom that there was no hope, that her mom said, "Over my dead body." And it was because of her mom that she had all of her success.
Mm.
And that crushed me at 5 o'clock in the morning because I didn't leave any stone unturned either. And talking in complete sentences isn't going to be in the cards for my son. He's not wired that way.
Right.
He's not ever going to be wired that way. And all I could think about was, as happy as I am for them, and I have no doubt that her parents championing her and pushing her be her best self. I have no doubt. But she was already wired to be able to do that. And there's
Thank
a
you, Lee.
lot of truth in that.
Thank you, Lee. You are speaking, you are preaching to the choir because I have a son that's wired a certain way. I feel like I left no stone unturned. I did every intervention. And my
Right.
son is who he is, and he is moderately autistic. He's not high functioning. And there are times that I blame myself when I hear these stories, right?
Well, I think that that's the danger, is that you have a lot of parents out there who already are terrified. I mean, they think the world's going to end when they hear autism. And then now they think that they have to do these super Herculean efforts to get their child to this point. And it made me think about compasses, and about how when we start out in our parenting journeys, I mean, none of us know that we're about to become autism parents. Every parent on the planet, whether you are a parent in some distant country, but whether you are, no matter who you are as a person, as a parent, when you start out on this journey, you jump onto the highway and you believe that your compass is supposed to point north. And what is north? Well, it's not money. It's not your son joining the priesthood. It's not any of those things. For everyone, from the parent that's in the tribe to the CEO to the mom and pop shop, owner, what they want is for their children to be self-sufficient in life. And if
Mhm.
you start off your journey and you hear autism and you believe that somewhere out there is a book that's going to tell you how to reach north, what happens when you never get there? What do you say to yourself? And are you so busy loving this hypothetical child who was never born to you? That child never existed. It's a child that maybe you've been spending a lot of time mourning, but that's not the child you were given in life. And the one that you have is probably wonderful in many ways. But that's what I saw, was all these books on how to get your child to speak, how to get your child to, all of these things. And there were very few books that were designed for parents of children who are higher needs. And if they are, they tended to be super religious to the point where it's about analyzing why God did this to you. And I find that hurtful for people who are of faith, because, God didn't do this to your child. What a terrible thing to say. Um, but either the books are of that bent, not to say that there aren't wonderful faith-based books out there that don't do that, but there are a lot that are, this is God's will for your child sort of thing. Or they are a lot of tears and crying. And they're the kind of books that autistic self advocates rail against because they don't want to be seen as this dread disease. And you can't, it's very hard to tell a parent how to get from where you started, thinking you're heading north, to realizing that self sufficiency is not your it's not your due north. It's not. It's helping your child be the happiest them that they can be. And you get to be the happiest you can be too. And that's okay. And that was kind of the message that I wanted to send. what's going to happen over this time because you're evolving as well.
And so your unique perspective on it is absolutely amazing. And I think it's refreshing and very needed at this time in our community. I wondered if you would tell us a little bit about the ring that you talk about early in the book.
That is a ring, Love Life, Be Brave. And the story was that I had had a friend who had had a son born, gosh, just a couple of days before 9/11. And he at first was maybe not even expected to live. He was a CMV baby, and there were all kinds of issues and possible brain calcifications. And she had this trauma in the hospital, and then all of a sudden the country's attacked. So, she had done this trauma plus extreme special needs parenting because her child was on, the verge of life or death at one point. It wasn't, whether or not he was going to talk. Um, and I realized that in the time that we had been friends, I hadn't begun to understand what she was going through. I hadn't begun to learn how to reach out and see if I could offer some help. So I contacted her and she took me out to dinner and she taught me the rules of the road, so to speak, and she had this ring that she pulled out that said love life. And the inside it said be brave. And she said, 7 years ago, I found this. And she said it spoke to me, but something told me to buy another one. And I just had a feeling I was going to need to give it to somebody else. And sure enough, there we were. And since then, I've actually gone and bought the same thing. And I sat in the very same spot in the very same Chili's and told another autism mama, what you might be facing and what you might not be facing. But, you know, yeah.
I think there needs to be a line of these rings that you need to put out to go with the book because we're all going to want that ring now,
Oh,
right?
yeah, they're wonderful. I mean, I've worn it for years and years, and it's been a great comfort to me. And it goes along with the book
Uh-huh.
because be brave, obviously is important in terms of advocacy and all of that sort of thing. But living life
Yeah.
is the most
Miss
important
that.
part, loving it. And it
Right.
reminds me very much of a family member who I talk about in the book, who said her greatest regret was that she spent all of this time doing all this research and classes and everything. And at the end of the day, she realized pretty much how her children were wired. And
Uh-huh.
all the things that she did, they might enhance some of their skills, they might help them to communicate, but they weren't gonna magically get them through law school.
Right.
And she said, "Just love your babies while they're young. Just enjoy being a mama, enjoy them being little." And from the time she told me that, and Callum was 2, I have never forgotten it. That's what I've always tried to do is just, like, be in the moment because of that very good advice from 2 wonderful special
Yeah,
needs
we
mamas.
we often miss their childhoods because we're so busy trying to fix them, right?
I was in mode, and
Neat.
I had been a school librarian, so, like,
Right.
my instinct to research was 100 times worse than the
Right.
average mom Googling, and that's bad enough.
Right.
Um, but yeah, at some point, I had to stop looking for ways to make him not himself, and instead look for ways to help him navigate the world as he is.
Mhm.
And when that acceptance comes, it's a lot better. It's a lot easier on the heart. And
In the
that's
book, sorry to interrupt you. In the book, you talk about missing your daughter's diagnosis. Can you tell us more about that?
yes, they're only 20 months apart. So she was not even walking when I got pregnant with Callum. And by comparison, her milestone seemed so much more advanced that I didn't worry about it. She was academically ahead of schedule, um, but I had noticed some little things, sensitivity with socks in her shoes, um, wanting to immediately like strip out of her clothes when she got home because she couldn't stand the feeling of them. She ended up getting an ADHD diagnosis, and all these things just like they were lining up. But if you're talking to her and she's busy masking, no one would know. And it wasn't until she was probably about 9 or 10 that I began to say, well, that's a little spectrumy, but I never thought anyone would give her a diagnosis. And then things just academically started to get more difficult um, as executive functioning skills became more important in school. And that's when we started to notice a social age discrepancy between her and her peers. It wasn't the academics. And then eventually, when you start getting into the higher level academics, it really does begin to impact that. So it was just prior to the pandemic that I finally got her in to see the right people. And I just had to push hard and get some testing and happened to have a wonderful doctor who said, I see what you're seeing. You're not crazy. So
A
my
running
daughter
theme
feels great
because
about it.
that's what they said when you finally went to the person who helped you with your son, because you were seeing something and nobody was seeing it and you had to keep knocking at that door. I want to switch though and talk about, I can't even imagine, Leigh, we a lot of us go toe to toe with our school district, or we get close to toe to toe. A lot of people threaten to go to due process. You actually went to due process, but there's another layer to it because it was the school district you worked for.
In
You
a
were their
small
employee.
southern town.
Oh, girl.
Uh, yeah, in a small southern town,
And
and
you
I,
weren't blogging about that. You weren't blogging about that for the first time in the book. And I don't want you to give too much away from it because we want people to get your book. But you talk about it in the book.
I do. I At the time, I just didn't want to try to leverage any small platform that I had in such a way. But it was very traumatic. I'll have to say that outside of the deaths of my father and my stepmother, that was one of the most traumatic things. I mean, you're looking at people who not only some of them had been my teachers, some of them had been my colleagues, um, and we're all sitting around this table, and suddenly I'm on the other side of the table, and it was very different. And I will say that everyone who has ever worked with my son has been wonderful. I've never had a single complaint about anybody who has ever worked directly with him. This was more of a district level services issue, and in the book we talk about how that got resolved and what my advice would be to both districts and parents, because having sat in 3 different chairs at that IEP table as specialist, as educator, and as parent, I have seen all of those perspectives. And I know the way that the teachers are feeling because they're to a great degree helpless. I know the way the parents are feeling. They're for sure feeling helpless. And I think that there are ways that if we could show a little bit more grace to each other, that we could prevent many of these situations from getting to due process.
If you could go back in time, Lee, what do you wish you could tell yourself about the journey you've been on?
I would tell myself that I would tell myself about that north destination I figured out. That was the part that I didn't have yet. My greatest fear in the world was that he wouldn't speak, and I had that fear because I have autism in my family. I knew that kind of autism. We also have the other um, type that's fewer needs, a little less help required, but that was my greatest fear. And I think that if I had known that I didn't need to spend so much time being afraid and instead I needed to get active, that it wasn't speaking that was important, it was communication. Get on communication, communication, communication. And it doesn't matter if they ever speak a spoken word. We need them to be able to communicate. And that part had to get hammered into me. I kept wanting him to talk.
I think that's everybody, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
it
that
is.
it's a process. And what I thought was amazing in the book, you talked about the grief that you felt because you yourself recognized in Callum. It's a pretty amazing passage in the book where you recognized and you saw it and knew for sure what it was before anybody else pointed it out, and that when you recognized that you expressed your grief sort of all at once, which I
I
find
did.
fascinatingly, that you said it was just like it just came out and that you cried so hard that your face didn't, like, for days wasn't the same.
Yeah, I had to tell my coworkers and my principal at the time that I had had a shellfish reaction because my
Mm.
face was swollen for 3 days.
Yeah.
And I just, and eventually I don't know if it comes from my father was the type of person. He was a lawyer. You make a plan, you get on it. And I think that was my first reaction the next morning was, okay, wipe all this off. Where do I start calling? What do I start doing? How do I help him? And
But you say in the book that that you cried and cried hard, you expressed that grief for that one moment in time, and then that was it for you.
I
That
never
you
cried about autism again. Never
That's
did.
amazing.
I'm not going to say that I didn't have. I mean, I have definitely been diagnosed with anxiety and depression and other issues, but I had that tendency before my children came along. The added stress of the things that I don't necessarily want to talk about in public in order to preserve my son's dignity, those things are stressful when you have no help, when there's no respite care, when there are no breaks at all. They are, and it's a good thing that I'm a fairly stable person because we have parents out there who have children like my son born to them every day who maybe they're not so stable and they've got no resources and no help. And then we wonder why really bad things are happening, and it's you know you you have to check yourself. You have to look at your own mental health or you will absolutely crash. I mean, I know for a fact that the due process case and my father's um, you know passing and all of that kind of stuff was was coming so quickly and so hard that that's what caused the Bell's palsy that eventually affected my body. I mean, stress will out itself. It will not stay hidden. And that concept of the oxygen mask really applies. And that's your responsibility. It's not your child's. You have to put that oxygen mask on. And, I've had to learn to do that in various ways. There isn't just one way to do it. Um, but but yeah, I've never cried again.
But I love that. I love that you got busy.
Yeah.
Just got busy. Yeah, it's the only thing I know how to, it's the only thing that being busy feels better, doing feels better. I find that there are a lot of parents out there who are constantly saying, I wish somebody would. They need to, somebody needs to come. There is no somebody. There is no they. They're not coming.
Yeah.
And if you don't, I mean, if you start, somebody else will join you. They always will. And that's what I found. But too many people are scared to. They think, well, I'm not educated enough. I'm not well spoken enough. Sure, you are. Do you
Yeah.
speak, are you able to speak to other people? Then you can advocate and you can do it in your own way, even if that's just going to your local store and saying, hey, how about getting a Caroline's cart in your store or whatever it is locally, talking to the city and asking them to section off a block during the parade where the horns don't go off. So it's a safe zone. Those are things that anybody can do. You don't have to be a speaker, a teacher, a writer, any of those things. But doing always feels better. And when you make
Yes.
the world a little bit better in some way for your child, you're also going to make it better for other people's.
But I often say that everybody has a talent and everybody has a talent they can use to help their child. Some are born researchers, some
Absolutely.
are born networkers, just everybody's got one. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. Leigh, what is next for you and your family?
Well, in addition to deciding to sign a book contract in a pandemic, we also decided to build a house because,
Mm.
the world wasn't stressful enough. But we are in the last days of it. We are putting up sheetrock today, as a matter of fact. We're really excited about it. But this is the house that autism is building. Every single detail of this house has been planned with my children in mind, from the layout to extra features um, to even just the whole concept. And I am looking forward to writing that story because I want people to kind of to see what can happen if you get that opportunity. Not everybody can build a house, I know, but when you get the chance to do it and to think about those things, it may give some people some ideas for ways that they can enhance their own homes.
Will
Right.
you be giving us like a walkthrough, like a video walkthrough on your blog?
I am. I'm gonna do some type of a video walkthrough and pictures. I wasn't sure if I was gonna start writing during the process or just write it all at the end. Um, being in the middle of house craziness right now, it hasn't been, quite on the agenda, but that's the next thing. And beyond that, I have some interest in possibly offering some. I don't want to call it Autism 101 because probably somebody's got that title out there somewhere, but an introductory autism course for friends, family, grandparents, something that they can do online, not have to leave the house, not have to find childcare for new parents, that kind of thing, from the perspective of someone who can answer the the educational and the autism specific questions, but also as a parent. And so that's something I'm looking into doing next. I enjoy working with people and especially talking to people who it's new for. They're scared, and I don't want them to be scared.
Amen. So let's talk a little bit because we're running out of time about where can people get the book and how can they access the blog?
Sure. LeighMerrydayPorch.com, all all one word there. It has links to all your favorite book places. It's pretty much available everywhere. There is an audiobook. I got to record it myself a few weeks ago. That was really exciting. So there is that, and the LeighMerrydayPorch.com. You can buy the book from there, but my blog is still over on FlappinessIs.com. I am looking to merge them at some point, but I haven't quite gotten there yet.
So, Leigh, I'm reading the book right now, and it's just amazing. You've always been a wonderful wordsmith, and the way you just get sucked into the story. The way
Thank
you tell the story, it's just amazing, and the whole metaphor of the being on the journey is just so beautiful. But you told me when you had sent the book off to the publisher that there's a part about Autism Live in it. I have not gotten there yet.
you. You haven't?
I haven't. So what does it say? Because
It's a
I don't really have a. You told me a little bit about it. I don't really have a
uh
memory of it.
Sure. It is during that time just prior to my Bell's palsy attack when I had been through the or was going through the due process issue, and I had an elderly mother who had fallen and broken 2 bones, and everything was just at its height. I was moving then too, kind of funny, but I was moving then too, and I started to have some things that were the anxiety was getting to me. I ran a red light. I did just kind of crazy things. But you had booked me for a second visit to Autism Live, and I had a massive panic attack the day before. I just, it that anxiety was there, and I just couldn't do it. And I canceled at the last minute. I don't even remember what the sorry excuse was that I gave you. I apologized, but when I got to the part about anxiety and the impact on the body, I just had to mention it because it's one of those things I always felt so bad about. I'm generally, pretty reliable. show up on time, but
And
it
I don't
wasn't but maybe a few after that that I woke up one morning and very shortly thereafter couldn't feel my face. So I have about 20% permanent facial paralysis on that side.
Well, I feel terrible. We didn't know what was going on, but people cancel last minute all the time, and it happens. And when you said to me that that had happened, and I said, "Oh my gosh, I hope we weren't, I hope I wasn't miserable about it." I don't recall it, Lee, but I can tell you, we know more than anybody else. Nancy and I know stuff happens.
Right.
And you know, this is fun, and I think it's wonderful when we can put out information that other people can learn from, but it's not the be all end all. So I felt bad that you were saying that, it sort of hung
Oh,
over you a little bit, that you felt bad that you
oh no.
canceled last minute.
I've just always felt a little bit guilty about it, and I thought, well, you know what, this is the perfect chapter to apologize.
Well, there's no need to apologize, and I'm sorry because I don't I don't
You
I don't
didn't. You never.
remember it,
You
and I
never
don't
fussed with me.
remember I don't remember thinking, but I should have checked and said, "Are you okay?" And that doesn't always occur to me either. But I'm sorry that it took up any space on your journey,
Oh well, thank you.
because
I
we love
appreciate
you.
it.
I love you.
Oh,
I've always loved you, and I'm loving this book, and I'm excited for you that this is where you're at. And I'm it seems like you're doing quite well, and I'm happy for that.
Yeah,
thank you. I appreciate that.
your message is so refreshingly and so needed in our world.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I just wanted to bring some I wanted to bring some comfort to someone, and I really hope honestly that more educators read it as well,
Mhm.
because I think that there are some lessons in there that maybe they'll take a little bit better from me being a veteran educator myself than a parent lecturing them.
Right.
Um, because
Good point.
I know what it feels like to want to lecture them, but yeah, what they're dealing with is tough out there.
Well, a good point, but I'm excited for everybody to read your book. So again, they can get it from any bookseller, but you can go to leemayporch.com and
Yes,
see
and
everything.
there are links to all the major bookstores and, Target and Amazon and all that stuff.
There you go. Amazing. I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to spend time, and you'll have to come back.
Thank you. I would love to come back.
All right, amazing. Thank you so much, and best of luck as you start your new journey in the new house.
Yes,
Thank
thank you.
you. Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Absolutely.
We'll be
Uh, when
looking.
I get when I get that piece finished, I'll be sure to send it to y'all.
Okay,
Okay, great.
fantastic. Thank you
All
Fantastic.
so
right.
much, Lee.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for being
ladies.
here. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Really inspirational, wonderful, amazing educator and mom and writer.
Yeah,
So
and
check.
it worked out great that our first guest couldn't show up, because how would we possibly have had time for these two dynamic women?
Well, exactly, and she had things going on as well, so we did have an inkling that she might not be here because it happens.
Right.
So for anybody who has had to call and cancel on us last minute, my heavens, do you know that Matt Asner was on his way to the studio once? We had started the live show. He was on his way to the studio and we were waiting for him to arrive. He never made it because he was in a car accident.
Uh,
I mean, stuff happens.
right.
And we don't hold a grudge here. We understand that stuff happens, and it's not the Today Show. So,
Right.
you know, so it's not the Today Show. But we love it when we can have people on, so it happens. I have to say, Nancy, we're out of time, and I just want to say that next week on the show, we are having Danny Bowman on the show. I also know that we are scheduled to have Kobe Bird on, and we have other guests too that I don't have my fingers on it right now, but it's an amazing week because we're closing out April with a bang. It's going to be a strong week, so people are going to want to tune in, and that's really all we have time for. But
Yeah.
I'll see you guys on Monday. Until then, give your kiddos a hug from me.
And give yourselves a hug from me. Thanks for joining us today.
Bye-bye for now.
Bye.
If you found anything helpful in this video, please give us a like. In fact, make sure that you smash that subscribe button on YouTube and give us a like on Facebook. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Instagram for important updates. And please download our free podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much. See you next time.